Hello everyone, and this is Glenda Winkleman, and welcome back to Creative Grandma. I have another Tunisian stitch pattern here for you. This one I'm calling the Tunisian Two Stitch. This is a combination of a base row of regular Tunisian stitch, and then you're going to be doing a knit stitch and the cross stitch. So I have 3 samples here to show you now. I have the first one that is a 2-color combination where I use bright white and then a variegated. So there's the first sample. I have a second sample done in the classic off-white where you can see the design. There's the cross stitches. And there you have your knit stitch. Very nice textured pattern. And then I have one done in a yarn, color changing yarn where it gradually blends the colors. So there's my 3 samples. For my sample swatch, I chose to use 2 colors. I'm using worsted weight yarn, so you can either choose to use 1 color or 2. I'm using 2 because I want to show you how to join your colors and how to run it up the side of your work. If you don't want to deal with changing colors, then go ahead and just choose 1 color and you can work a solid color swatch because you're just learning this pattern. You're also going to need a size L11 Afghan hook or an 8mm. This hook is a little harder to find. You may have to look online to find one of those. So if you have a size 10.5K US size or a 6.5mm hook will work just as well. I'm using the L hook because I'm trying to show you the detail of the stitches so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better, and it always shows up when you're using the bigger hook. So you're going to need to chain 20 for our swatch. So go ahead and get your chain 20 ready, and I'll be back to begin. I have my chain 20 ready. Now our first row is going to be the basic Tunisian crochet stitch. Now for this row, we are going to be working in the back of the chain in these, what we call the bumps. It's the center thread right in the middle of the loop. So to start the row, you're going to turn your chain and you're going to look for that first bump, which is here. So you're going to skip that and you're going to look for the second bump, which is here. So go ahead and insert your hook into that second bump, yarn over the hook, and pull through that bump. Look for the next bump, which is here. It's, like I said, it's the thread right in the middle of that loop. And all you're going to do is insert your hook into that bump, yarn over, pull it through. And you're going to continue in that manner across. So go ahead and work in that back thread, and then I'll show you how to take your row off when you're at the end. I'm at the end of the first half of row 1. I went in all the back loops, so now we're going to take the loops off. So you're going to put the yarn over your hook and pull through just 1 stitch. Then to take the rest of the loops off, you're going to put yarn over the hook and pull through 2 loops. Yarn over the hook, pull through 2 loops. And I did forget to mention that when you get to the end of the first half of row 1, always count your stitches. You should have had 20 loops on your hook. And if you didn't, then rip it out and try again, and always make sure you have the same amount of loops on your hook that you started with on your chain. So yarn over, pull through loops, 2 loops on hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook. Continue in that manner until you have 1 loop on the hook, which counts as your first stitch of the next row, and I'll be right back. I'm at the end of row 1, and this is what your work should look like. You should have 1 loop remaining on your hook, and the reason I started my base row working in the back loops is because it creates this very nice edging. I I hope you can see it good. Right here for when you, like if you're making an afghan or anything that you're making, when you come around with your border, it's so much easier to see these stitches. Now you can do it the other way if you prefer, where you just insert your hook in the chain and pull it through. You don't have to work in the back loops, but this is the reason I did it, to create that nice edging on your work. So to start row 2 is the beginning of your repeat. You're going to do 2 rows of the knit stitch. So to do the knit stitch, you're going to look for your, I guess I'll say a horseshoe shaped. You'll have your 2 threads of yarn coming up on top, coming through, and you'll have this loop. You're going to insert your hook into that loop, and you're going to go from the front underneath those 2 stitches all the way to the back of the work, right through. Yarn over, and then you're going to pull it through that horseshoe loop. So you're going to do that again all the way across. In each stitch across, you're going to look for that horseshoe loop. You go underneath these 2 strands, insert the hook into that space, front all the way to the back, yarn over, and then pull it through that loop. And you can see that your stitches are underneath those threads, and you can see how it's kind of starting to make that knit stitch look. So look for your loop. It's underneath these strands. If you're not sure, just stick your fingers in there until you see it. Insert your hook in that space, yarn over, pull it through. Look for your next loop. Insert in the center from front all the way to the back, yarn over the hook, and pull it through. So go ahead and repeat that across, and we'll meet up. I worked my first half of row 2. I'm over to the last stitch. So you're going to insert your hook into the top vertical bar, and you're also going to go to the back and insert it in that second vertical bar right behind. So if you look at your work and turn it, you'll see these 2 loops here. So you're just going to go underneath those 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through. And that creates the same edging that's on the bottom of your work. So to take your work off, you're going to repeat it the same way in each row. Yarn over, pull through the first stitch, and then yarn over through 2 stitches, yarn over through 2 loops on hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook, and continue across until you have 1 loop on your hook. So now when you get to the end of row 2, go ahead and repeat 1 more additional row of the knit stitch, same as row 2, and I'll meet up with you at the end of row 3. I'm at the end of row 3, and with Tunisian crochet it is going to curl a little, and that's usually corrected when you put your border on. So I have the first row was the Tunisian knit stitch. But what happens is when you do this knit stitch across, it actually, when you're doing this, it goes down to the row below it and turns it into the stitch. And I'll show you what I mean when I'm doing the cross stitch, which row 4 will be a Tunisian cross stitch, which will, the 3rd row, which is a knit stitch, will actually become the cross stitch row, which that's a little confusing, but once you do a few of the rows, you'll understand what I mean. So now I'm going to change colors, but I'm not going to fasten off my pink. If you're using 2 colors for this design, like in my sample with the white and the multicolor, you can just run your yarn up the side of your work. Now, I am a knot tyer, so if you're not a knot tyer, you can just pull your new color through and weave it in. But when I do this, I tie this knot. Tunisian crochet is so thick in the back that you'll never know that you have knots in your work. So now we're going to start row 4, which is our cross stitch row. So before you pull that last loop through, which I should have told you before, when you come to the end, the second half of row 3, you're going to leave 2 loops on the hook. So I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier. So go ahead and pull that new color through those last 2 loops, and that gives you your first stitch of row 4. So now what we're going to do is we're going to begin our cross stitch across. So you skip your edging stitch, you're going to skip this first stitch, and you're going to insert your hook into that second stitch, yarn over, pull it through that stitch. Now you're going to work backwards, and you're going to come over here to this vertical stitch that you skipped, bring your hook over, insert it underneath just the vertical stitch, not all the way through your work, just under that stitch, yarn over, and pull it through. And if you see closely on this work, the cross stitches are not being made with the green. It's going down in row 3 and turning row 3 into your cross stitch row. So when you're repeating this pattern, you have to remember that. So row 3, which was the knit stitch, now becomes your cross stitch. So go ahead and skip the next vertical stitch. You're going to insert your hook into the next vertical stitch, just the stitch, not from front to back, but just underneath that thread. Yarn over, pull it through. Come back and go in underneath the vertical stitch that you skipped. Insert that hook under that stitch, yarn over, pull it through. And there you can see a second cross stitch was made. There's your 1 and 2. So I hope you can see that good. And just continue that across. You're working in 2s. So you're going to skip the next stitch, the first one of the next 2. You're going to go into that next one, yarn over, pull it through, come back, go into that skip vertical stitch, yarn over, and pull it through. So go ahead and repeat that across, and you'll go over, and there should be 1 stitch remaining, which is the edge stitch, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've done the first half of row 4, which if you look at your work closely, you'll see the cross stitches forming. So now we're at our last vertical stitch, so you're going to do the same thing. Look for those two loops here on the side. You're going to insert your hook underneath those 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through. So to take the row off, it's the same as before. Yarn over through the first stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and go ahead and repeat that until you get to the last 2 loops, and I'll meet you there. I'm at the end of row 4, and I hope you can see this, because like I said, the Tunisian stitch does like to roll when you first start it. You have 2 loops remaining on the hook. So before you pull the last loop through, you keep your second color, do not fasten it off. This can work right up the back side of the work. And then when you work your border, you'll be working your stitches over it and you won't see it. So just grab your pink or whatever your other color was, and just yarn over and pull that new color through those 2 loops on your hook. Now that was the pattern. Your repeat pattern is row 2 through 4, but because we did the cross stitch, I'm going to go ahead and show you when you come across your row again with your new color. Do not cross these stitches. They'll want to cross because you made the cross stitch. They're really close together. But when you work your start of row 2, like this will be row 5, but it'll be row 2 of the repeat. You're just going to work that knit stitch the same as before, going the first stitch, don't cross them. just go right across the row. Look for your horseshoe shape, that loop, insert your hook, yarn over, pull it through, and just don't cross those stitches. I think you can see pretty well, whoops, my fingernail got caught, sorry about that. I think you can see pretty well how straight they are, so you just go right in order and start row 2 of the repeat and just work rows 2 through 4, and then I'll show you how to bind off. So I'm going to go ahead and just rip this out real quick. To bind off your work, my fingers don't want to work today, sorry about that. You're going to end with a knit row. So you will do it in the same manner almost. You'll look for your loop, you're going to insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over, and you're going to pull through all loops on your hook. And that creates your slip stitch. So look for the loop. Now this is when you're finished with whatever you're working on, finish with your piece, you're going to bind it off. Look for your loop, insert your hook, yarn over, pull it through all loops on your hook. And you can see how it's creating that edging, which is so nice when you're doing border to find your stitches. Look for the loop, insert your hook front all the way to the back, yarn over your hook, and bring it through all loops on your hook. And you just continue that over, and that's how you bind off your work. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Tunisian Two Stitch. Now this is, I'm working with the pink and green. It's rolling a little, and I did block these so they laid flat, but this is kind of what your work would look like. This is your knit stitch, and this is your cross stitch. So please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and check out some of my other Stitch of the Week stitches if you want something new to try. Happy crocheting!